Everyone, I am so excited to be here with Shawandra from Brwnskn Yoga. And what's super cool, I was just telling her that this is the first time I've interviewed someone who I don't know. Usually I invite people to interview, but we found Shawandra on Instagram and we knew we had to speak to her specifically for her work with working in schools. And it sounds like you're working in lots of different areas, sort of after school, during school, so I'm really excited to have you here. So let's get started by telling us your background because we just started to talk about before, and I want you to share where have you come from? Kind of what's your background, what's your passion, and what's your work now?
I am Shawandra Ford, and I am the founder and owner of Brwnskn Yoga. Brwnskn Yoga is a lot of different things. So my background is IT and finance. I've always worked for the school district. My very first job, straight out of high school. I graduated in May, and in September, I was working at an elementary school as a 4-hour front office clerical assistant. Kind of worked my way up, and I ended up in IT and finance. And I worked there my entire adulthood. That's the only job I've ever had in my entire life. In 2019, I decided that I was going to resign. I was tired. I had done a lot. Um, I did a lot of work. I brought in over $30 million in E-rate federal funding. Most people are not familiar with it, but when they see the FCC on their phone bill, then they connect the dots. So I did a lot with USAC, made a lot of great accomplishments. And one day I was just tired and I was just like, okay, I'm going to step out on faith and I'm going to do this yoga thing and see where it leads me. And yoga has been great. I always tell people, I've never been a classroom teacher. So when I go into spaces and I teach, I explain to them, I am not a classroom teacher. When it comes to discipline, I don't handle disciplinary issues. I'm a yoga teacher, and yoga is more so on the calming side. So, yeah, I'm just not a classroom teacher. I look at things differently. There are a lot of different programs out there, like Teach Like a Champion, or different programs. But that's not. I don't really incorporate a lot of that into my yoga teaching. And also, as far as Brwnskn Yoga, people are often curious as to where did Brwnskn Yoga come from. And the gag is that I used to have it on my license plate. And on your license plate, you can only have so many letters, so many characters. So I had to take out the vowel. So it became BRWNSKN. And then I just added the yoga for a little flavor, add a little fun to it.
I love that because I love that your first career, because so many of us, right, are in our community are coming from one career and shifting to others. And what's interesting that you were, even though you were in IT and finance, you were still in the in the education space. So you were probably in head office, right? You weren't in the classrooms, but you still probably got a sense of what the challenges were in
Yes.
education, right? What the teachers were going through. So you have a deeper understanding and what the students are up to. So even though you weren't there, you still had the advantage of what's going on and what are the troubles that are happening. And then interesting that you shifted in 2019 before COVID, right? So this wasn't a COVID switch. This was, I'm going to do this anyway, right? And then you started your programming. And I love that you said, this is what I'm good at. I don't do class, I don't do management yet. I mean, maybe that's something that you will later because I think you're a natural, but I love that you're clear about what you're offering. That's really is refreshing, right?
Mhm.
Yeah. And yeah, yes. Sorry.
And another thing, like for the transition piece, I I practice yoga. Yoga was a part of my practice, my daily routine. I would leave work and I would head straight to the gym and take a yoga class.
Mm,
And also working in the educational field, I knew that classes such as yoga and social emotional learning, even going back to where I grew up and thinking about home ec, driver's
mm,
ed, shop classes, our
mm.
students don't receive those services anymore.
Right, right.
When it comes to funding, typically those are the first classes that get cut.
Right.
and being able to go back into a space, especially a space that I love so much and so dearly, just being able to go back into that space, not in the same capacity, but in a
Mm.
different capacity, and
Mm.
still being able to serve my community, very humbling.
Ah, it's amazing. And what you're doing there then is your own business, you're a contractor who comes in, right? So tell us a little bit more about what kind of program do you offer schools?
I offer schools several different options. I can go in and I have a curriculum that I can go in and I can teach where I'm there maybe 6 weeks. I've been contracted to be out for 6 weeks at a time. I've also been contracted to be there as almost like a pull-out class. So if we
Mm.
think about um, music, or if we think about library, or our students going to PE, I've
Right.
been in schools where I've been there year round, and I maybe teach 3 days a week, and I'm teaching 18 classes a day. I mean, 18 classes a week. That's a lot.
Right.
Definitely after school programs. Um, my athletes, I have a lot of athletes that I teach, which they are amazing. So I teach anywhere from pre-K, little bitty babies. Some babies are 2 and 3, and they're amazing. And I teach all the way up to 12th grade, college, whomever walks through my door.
Right.
Um, I also teach in
Yeah.
a lot of underserved communities. So those spaces where I may have private schools that reach out to me and they want me to come and do something maybe for testing. Come out and teach for testing. Our students are stressed. Can you come out and give them some type of relief? And I also go out into very underserved communities where they would not receive these services.
Mm.
So sometimes I typically say, if I go in the hood, and they're like, okay, here comes the yoga teacher. And they've
Right.
never even heard of yoga before.
Right. So you have such an incredible range. How are you doing this all yourself? Like, have you got other teacher trainers that are contracted for you? Or are you literally doing this all yourself?
I wouldn't say that I'm literally doing it by myself. God, yeah, He has played a major role in what it is that I do, because I do teach all of my classes. I don't have an assistant. I have people that come out and demonstrate for me. I have people that come out and work my vendor booths, but I teach all of my classes. So every day I'm out in the community. If I am not at my studio, I am out in the community working. And I actually recently just started working with the Tennessee Department of Correctional Office, where now I go out into juvenile detention centers, and I also go out into the jail system, and I teach yoga to people that are incarcerated.
Oh my gosh. When do you sleep? Like, I'm exhausted thinking about like the amount of travel and and also just the back end, because you've got to be
Yeah,
booking all these classes and then you're getting there and
it's a lot.
I mean, you're
I,
amazing.
I cannot wait for my husband to watch this, because this is a lot, and I need
Yeah.
him. He'll sign off on it. So most
Yeah.
of the time when I get home, if I get home around 4 or 5 o'clock, I'm out until
You're out.
11
Oh,
o'clock at night.
oh my
And
God.
then I wake up and I check my emails, and I do, things behind the scene. And then I'm up at 5:30 when my son, it's time for him to catch the bus. And
Oh
I
my
may
God.
take a nap, and then I'm right back out in the community.
You're amazing. So thinking about especially the ages, the school age children, what are the sort of the benefits? What are you seeing is the impact of the work that you're doing? Like you said, you're very mission based, right? And so that's
Mhm.
what's pulling you to do this work. What are you seeing from the children?
I think when I look at it from their perspective, I think for most adults, they already have a yoga practice.
Mm.
If they're practicing yoga now, for the most part, not for everyone, but for the most part, they already have a yoga practice. But for my kids, now I'm helping them to develop their own yoga practice.
Mm.
I was at an event for Nike, and one of my students from a previous school, she came up to me and she was like, Miss Ford. And I was like, no, let's teach. I gave her my mic. She has to be fifth grade. I gave her my mic, and just right on cue, she started teaching in front of this group of people, of employees for Nike. And she's just teaching yoga. That's the impact. Although I haven't taught her in maybe a year or two, she still knew it. It was still here. So now we're planting these little seeds that they take
Mm,
along with them. They may
right.
not remember everything. They're still kids. They're not going to remember everything I taught them,
Mm,
but there's
right.
some nuggets that they take away.
Right. Right. I love that. And I'm looking at your pictures on Instagram, and one thing that we're really passionate about in our community is as having diverse voices and diversity, right? And so for that population of underserved, say the pictures you were showing, those children get to look up to you and say, that teacher has looks like me. And that is so, so crucial, right? That
Mhm.
that is transformational, right? And so they've got someone that they can look up to. You are their hero. You're an
I
inspiration.
wouldn't say
Tell
I'm their
me,
hero, but more
but
like
for
the
them, yeah, but for them, you are, right? You're amazing because you're giving them such a gift, right? Like you saw in that child, you saw her more than she could see herself. You gave her
Mhm.
the mic, you empowered her, right? And then she probably didn't even realize how much she remembered or experienced, right? Tell us a little bit about that. What's it like for you working in underserved with these children who see you as a diverse voice within the yoga field?
My yoga studio is actually in the community where I grew up. Um, I probably lived in every apartment complex in this neighborhood. Um, it's inside of a mall, so the mall where my studio is. So many times, so many days after school, I spent in this particular location.
Mm,
And I think like the biggest takeaway is that when I walk into that space, um, I am those little kids that I used to be who they are now. If I walk in and they see this fro, it is popped out, they was like, okay, Miss Ford. And I was like,
mm,
okay, let's get into it.
yeah,
And so I'm speaking their language and I've already walked their walk, so I can understand most of what they're going through.
yeah.
Um, I myself came from a very disadvantaged family,
Mm,
so I know what it's like.
mm,
So for them to be able to connect with me, even when it come down to wearing, I might have on a pair of Jordans, and they was like, "Oh, Miss Ford, let's not crease those shoes," and we get it, and we're like on
right,
the same page. And I was like, "Oh no,
right,
we're coming out of these." And
right.
it's just being able to have that connection with them. I see them, they see me. I feel them, they feel me, and they know that what I'm offering to them is something positive. If I have to
Mm,
get onto them, because sometimes I often do, I was like, hey, let's get it together. Then
mm,
we're here. There, the connection is there. I think
mm,
for me, I can go into a space and I can talk to them in a certain manner that some
mm.
people may not feel comfortable with.
Yeah, right.
And if I have to, um, if I have to pull them pull them aside and say, "Hey, I need you to get it together.
Mm,
We're gonna practice this. We're gonna practice yoga, and I need you to get it together."
yeah. Have you thought about leading teacher training? Is that something that you're looking at possibility? Because it would be, like you said, it's crucial that we have more people like yourself in the areas that you're working in. Is that something you would consider or thought about?
I think I would very much love to do that. Um, it's just that it's like a chemistry. It
Yeah,
has to be the right people.
yeah.
For the most part, um, even just for me, being a woman of color, yes, I can go into multiple spaces and I can teach. But I'm not the only person of color that teaches yoga. So for other people that do, they have to be willing to go into those spaces where most people are not willing to go. I have a group of students that I teach that are in a displaced location, and they're. It's not that they don't have anything. It's not that they may not have been able to afford their rent or their mortgage that month. So they have a space where they can go and they can reside until they can get back up on their feet.
Mm,
But as a person of color, you can't be afraid to go in those spaces. You cannot be afraid of your own people.
mm,
So although there are other yoga teachers and although there are other yoga teachers of color, it just has to be the right chemistry. You can't be afraid.
yeah, Yeah, I hear that. I hear that. There's a lot. What's so amazing, the root of the ancient wisdom of yoga and how we can adapt it for communities around the world, right? And as you say, it has to be authentic. It has to be about connection. It has to be about you following your true voice, right? That all of us have a way that we're sharing the yoga practice in a way that's real and meaningful to us, right? And so within our community, I was talking to someone the other day about how do we find our niche within the kids yoga space,
Mhm,
right? And so like you said before, we have actresses. We were talking about before we got on, you and I are just like two people having a cup of tea right now, just chatting,
mhm,
right? But there's actresses out there doing amazing work. There's people on television. But I'm a literacy. I love picture books. This is my obsession, is creating yoga experiences through literature, right? And so for you, right, is finding where you belong, right? We're all
mhm.
trying to find what's our vehicle, like you were saying before. It's kind of like it comes through in your work naturally, right? It's not, you wouldn't do all this because you hated it. That's an
Some days.
incredible, right? It's an incredible schedule that you're doing
Yeah,
because you're doing it because you love the work,
mhm.
right? Would you agree?
I definitely agree. There are some days I will never paint a picture to make it seem like it's easy every single day. There are some days, even for me, where the energy is so low, where
Mm,
I just want to stay in bed myself. So I get it. Um, but it definitely has to be a passion. I love my students. I love all of my students. And it's so funny because at a lot of the schools, because I'm at so many different schools, some of the schools are rivalry schools. And they may see me post something about another school and they're like, Miss Ford, well, you're our yoga teacher. And I was
uh-huh.
like, well, yes, of course I'm your yoga teacher, but I serve everyone in the community. So sometimes they get into their feelings and they're like, well, why would you be over there? You know that that's our rivalry school. I was like,
Yeah,
but that's the thing about connection.
yeah,
Now we're bringing them together. I had one school where they had a basketball game, and I taught both teams yoga. And when we got on the court, we had to take like an entire group picture, and I was bringing them together, although they were competitors. Uh-oh, hold on a second. Yeah, there we go. Although they were competitors, I was still able to bring them together, just through the yoga practice.
yeah. Oh,
So
that's incredible. That's
they're
amazing.
funny. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I
So
love all of my students. That is like my disclaimer. I love all of my students.
I love it, even when it's hard. Do you
Yeah.
have a story for us, like someone maybe with a student that you really connected deeply, or something they did, or we do love stories here, something that stood out that you were like, oh, this is incredible.
So I have so many stories. I have a lot of different stories. I can give you maybe two. I teach a lot about affirmations. One of the biggest things for me is affirming yourself.
Mm,
And here in Memphis, our crime rate is really, really high. And, the biggest takeaway for me is that I feel like if I can't find any words to use to affirm myself,
mm,
and then I look at you as my peer,
mm,
and I can't find any words to affirm you because I challenged them with that. I was like, okay, give me a positive affirmation. Now look at the
mm,
person that's standing next to you and give them a positive affirmation. A lot of people can't do that. That's very hard. And what I found is that if I can't affirm myself, I can't affirm you, then yes, it's easy for me to take your life, right? And so when I'm doing affirmations, at one particular site, I had a student who told me that she was toxic. And I was like, okay, so let's go with that. And we're going to continue with the flow. Every student has to give me an affirmation. Um, I didn't say anything bad about her using the word toxic. If that's the word that she chose for herself on that particular day, that was absolutely okay. But the
mm,
following week, her coach was there and she came back and she asked me, she said, Miss Ford, can I change my word? And I said, no. And she was like, "Ah." And I was like, absolutely, you can change your word. You can always change anything about yourself. It's
mm,
completely up to you. You can change whatever you want. And
mm.
I get it at first, sometimes when we're doing the affirmations, they're really not into it.
Right.
But then she saw the bigger picture.
Yeah.
I had one little girl. She came up to me and no, she did not. It was their class day, and I was teaching yoga at her school, and she sent me a message on Instagram, and she said, "Miss Ford, do I take my robes out first and then put on my dress, or do I put my dress on and then take out my robes?" So those are life skill lessons. And the fact that she felt comfortable enough to reach out to me and ask me that particular question,
Mm.
I actually had to take a moment to go sit in the bathroom and kind of have a little release because that was major.
Yeah. Yeah.
Lastly, I had one little boy. He came up to me, maybe he was in third grade,
Mm.
and he said, "My mom passed away."
Mm.
And I was like, "Okay." I said, "Well, I lost my mom as well." I said, "How are you dealing with it?" And he said, "I have been," he said, "I see a therapist." And I was like,
Mm.
"Okay." I said, "Well, I saw a grief therapist too." I was like, "How's it working for you?" And he said, "I have anxiety." Then my my instincts, I was very upset that
Mm.
for a third grader, that he would know anything about anxiety. So
Right.
at that moment, I knew that it was something different that we had to do within our community, because a
Mm.
third grader should not know anything about anxiety. And so
Mm.
it told me two things: either he heard someone say it, or
Mm.
someone mentioned it to him.
Yeah.
And instead of giving him the tools and resources that he needed in order to deal with the anxiety, we gave him a label and we stamped it
Mm.
right here in his memory. And so
Mm.
now anytime that he acts out, he can use the fact that he has anxiety. And in my class, you don't get to do that. I need you to use the tools and the resources that I'm giving you to deal with your anxiety, but you don't
Mm.
get to act out just because you have anxiety. We
Right.
need to fix that. That's a problem.
Oh my goodness, you're amazing. What I'm really getting from you is that you've taken the platform of the ancient wisdom of yoga, but you're putting your own self into it, right? You are connecting deeply with children, making it relevant and meaningful. Like you said, you're coming to after school programs, meeting them where they're at. They're exhausted, end of day. A lot of the kids are probably white knuckling all day long. There's a lot of stresses, and you're having a soft landing for them after school and connecting with them, letting them be heard and seen and understood, and allowing them to tell you their stories and share about the way they do their hair or whatever is going on for them, or their feelings they have. And that's a true embodiment of the yoga practice, right? Is who we be, right? It's so important.
And even in one of my classes that I teach for people that are incarcerated,
Mm.
there was a guy, he was there, and we were in Shavasana, and I was watching him the entire time, and he just had silent tears just rolling down his face. And even just me positioning myself a little bit closer to him, because we can't get very close, then they start to go away.
Mm.
Um, And for me, that was such a huge moment, just seeing him laying there with the tears and realizing that he was definitely
Mm.
taking it in and he was processing. When the
Mm.
tears start to flow, you're starting to process, and he was starting to release. And it
Mm.
was just so good for him. And I ask about him each and every single time I go,
Mm. That's
just making sure
amazing.
he's staying the course and staying the path.
Yeah. And I also love that you seem to be unstoppable. I mean, the fact that you're teaching from preschool all the way adults and in prisons, right? In lots of different ways. And so many of us are stuck or with our own fear or our own selves. What if, our own fears and anxieties of what if the school won't call me back? Or what if I get there and the children are out of control, right? Or what if they have needs that I don't know how to meet? But it feels like you're just in it. You just like people are contacting you, you're putting it out there, right, on your website. It's clear about all the different services that you offer. I just think that's so inspirational. And I hope that people listening to this interview get that sense of they can channel your energy, right? And just get out there and do it, because at the end
Yeah.
of the day, the difference that you're making is more important than our own insecurities or worries or concerns, right?
We have to release the fears, nothing to be afraid of. Um, like I said, I do go into some places that most people would not dare go. But however, those are the ones that need it the most.
Yeah. Right. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sure you're seeing a similarity too, even with your underserved and your private schools you mentioned. I mean, private schools, you would think, from the outside, sure, those children have money, they're probably the majority of population, but no, I mean, they still have
They have
enormous amount of needs.
they have what I can tell, they definitely have a lot of pressure. It's
Mm,
more pressure. They have pressure that, that they're even like with my athletes, where they're trying to keep scholarships
mm,
and they're trying to uphold the family name.
yeah.
Pressure is everywhere. And with
Mhm,
social media and, the internet, it's a lot. And just because you live in one particular environment and someone else lives in another,
right.
we're all dealing with pretty much the same thing.
Yeah.
Some people in the only difference is that some people can afford it and some people cannot.
Right.
That's the only difference.
Right.
That
Do
is
you
the
have
only difference.
do you have organizations that pay for you to go into schools of the underserved, or how do you get paid as such to go into these underserved communities?
Some schools contract me.
Yeah.
Some departments contract me. Um, or some people they just pay themselves. So I don't necessarily have like I have partnered with our local school district here in Memphis, and I've been able to like work within our wellness centers. But
Right.
as far as when it comes to the schools they pretty much they have an allocated fund that they can use to pay. Or even when I go um, into the correctional facilities. They have a budget, pretty much people, then I think once they see, even if I go and I teach a couple times, then the
Mm,
next year when they're creating their budget, they'll find a way to like incorporate it into their budget where they can still receive the same services.
I love it. I love it. Oh, you've just given me so much to think about. Thank you so much for sharing so generously. I feel like
You're
we could
so welcome.
talk for hours. I feel like this is just the beginning. I'd love to keep in touch and see what else we
Yes,
can
please
collaborate
do.
together.
And
Now,
and I don't believe in recreating the wheel. So,
right.
if there's material and information that I have, I'm always more than welcome to share with others. There's no reason why we cannot all collaborate together and we should not have to recreate the wheel.
Right. I love it.
Yeah.
Beautiful. So now how can people find you online? I was mentioning your Instagram page, right?
My
The
Instagram.
Brownskin Yoga. And I love
Mhm.
behind you up top is how you spell it. So people can
Yes,
get that.
there it is.
Yeah.
And that was from one of the events. I do a lot of events.
Oh, beautiful.
So yeah.
Perfect. So where else can we find you?
I am on LinkedIn.
Mm. Oh, right.
Yeah, I think LinkedIn is a very good resource that is underused. We should definitely use LinkedIn much more.
Perfect.
Um, Not so much on YouTube. I don't do a lot on YouTube, but my website is www.brwnsknyoga.com. I'm very present on Instagram, and it's at Brownskin Yoga.
Perfect. Beautiful.
Even TikTok.
Excellent. Awesome. Well, I am excited to see your journey unfold. I can't
Thank
believe you've only
you.
been doing this for 4 years or so and how much you've
Mhm.
accomplished in such a short time.
Yeah.
So it's exciting to see what happens next for you. Thank you again, my dear. So
Thank you.
such a treasure to be with you today. See you then.
Thank you so much. Bye bye.